It is Wednesday night in East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather on. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Going to talk Michigan State football, a little bit of roster construction, a little bit of transfer portal, a little bit of basketball. Expect to have Big Movie on the show tonight. Also, Jason Killop talking about the portal and recruiting Michigan State coaches on the road. And give us a like here at the channel. We'd really appreciate that. Also, become a subscriber to this channel so that you can be notified when we have this going on. Also, elsewhere on the channel, you'll see a little bit of the press conference today. Michigan State with a new volleyball coach. Pretty excited people over there. They're excited about that. Michigan State, non-revenue sports, Olympic sports, whatever you want to call them. Michigan State's pretty hot in that area right now, and they want to get volleyball going. Volleyball's a hot sport in the Big Ten. As a side dish, ice hockey. I don't call it ice hockey, it's hockey. Is that a side dish? Number one in the country? Is it an entree? I don't know. I was in Chicago this weekend for the Frozen Confines, Michigan State taking on Wisconsin at Wrigley Field. Saw some subscribers there. Hello to you guys that said hello along the way. Appreciate your support. That was a lot of fun. Also, I was at the GLI in Grand Rapids for 2 days between Christmas and New Year's. Michigan State doing a good job beating number 4 ranked Western Michigan to win the GLI championship, Michigan State's first Great Lakes Invitational championship in 15 years. So Michigan State hockey is rolling. Be on the road at Penn State this weekend. Michigan State basketball Thursday night. We'll have coverage at SpartanMag.com. Paul Konerdijk and myself and Jake Laskawa doing a great job. Michigan State versus Washington. Michigan State ranked number 16 in the country right now, 12-2, taking on 10-5 Washington with new coach Danny Sprinkle. So analysis of that, if you're seeing this after Thursday, it'll be on here somewhere. Go to SpartanMag.com for further coverage. We'd love to have you become a subscriber at SpartanMag.com. Go over there, check it out. You'll love it. Half off right now, transfer portal special. Get on board, get on track. You will like it. Let's go to what we'll do here is we'll go to the mailbag. Have about 10 or 11 questions tonight over at SpartanMag.com, the Underground Bunker message board, which is the church of what's happening now for Michigan State sports. The daily narrative on Michigan State sports over there at the Underground Bunker message board. I invited Michigan State fans, Spartan Maggers from around the globe to post questions, and we will field some of those questions here. Only about 10 or 11 tonight. Might have a shorter show tonight. Depends on how long we go with Ron and Jason. Looking forward to hearing from them soon. Anyway, so those questions, we will be tackling those here as we get into it. Let's go to question number 1 from Desert Sparty in Arizona. And this was actually question number 3 or 4, but I put it up number 1 because I want to get some feedback from the viewing audience on this one. He says, Comp, have you done a ranking on the top players for the current Michigan State football roster? A ranking. If so, can you give us a list who you have in the top 10? I've done this in the past. Back in the old Spartan magazine days, when we had Spartan Plus and a few other things, we would do a top 85. We did that at SpartanMag.com in the early years also, a continuous series. It was along the lines of the old Nick Saban adage that it's not the top 40 that determines how good your team is, it's the bottom 40. So we do a top 85, and we take a close look at players ranked from 41 to 80 to get a look at that bottom 40, and we would compare that to previous Michigan State teams and say, okay, number 55 right now is Ross Weaver. If you go back 3 years ago, it was someone else, and we compare, well, how good is he compared to Ross Weaver as a redshirt freshman? A little harder these days, because in those days, they were bringing in 20 to 25 man recruiting classes. They were redshirting a lot of them, and they were keeping a lot of them. So, and we were able to talk to assistant coaches a little more freely. Now it's a little bit more difficult with the way the interviews go. Back then, you could casually catch Michigan State assistant coaches. They were coming off the practice field and asking a little bit about player development. At Spartan Magazine, we were always doing more stories on player development than others. Others do a really good job covering Michigan State. We do a lot of things, and one of them is player development updates. So we're always looking for updates on players that were redshirting, who was playing well on the scout team, those type of things. A little bit harder to come by that information now. Secondly, a lot of those players are leaving and the new ones are coming in. So that bottom 40, it's harder to get a read on it these days. But even when we did it, it was always tricky to get an idea. It was always difficult to put who your top 10 were. Tell you what, last year at this time going into the season, I wouldn't have, I think we all had Jack Velling really high, and he kind of had a little bit of, he wasn't as productive as he wanted to be. In August of 2023, I'm looking at a top 85 I put together and never posted it. It had Simeon Barrow number 1. That was before the 2023 season. Had Jacoby Windman, number 2. Had Cal Halliday, number 3. Maybe I had him too high. That was a lot of that is you are looking at past production and also what the ceiling of potential is. Had J.D. Duplain, number 4. Zion Young, number 5. Charles Brantley, number 6. Trey Mosley, number 7. Nick Samac. And then Derek Harmon, 9. Harmon hadn't started yet. Jalen Berger was on his way in. We had him number 10. We had Noah Kim, number 12, projecting him to be the starting quarterback. He did start, didn't hang on to the job. You had Nathan Carter, I had him number 14, coming in, hadn't played it down yet. Had Jalen Sami, number 15. Carter turned out pretty good. Jalen Sami, transferring in from Colorado, had some bad weight on him, never really did a whole lot. It's tricky to do. It's tricky. Let's see, top 85. So what I want to do is throw that out to y'all, throw out to you guys. See, last year in pre-spring, this was before spring practice, and I never posted this, but I was just kind of scribbling around. I had Jack Velling, number 1, coming in as second team All Pac-12. There was nobody on the Michigan State roster that was second team or better coming out of the Big Ten. Had Simeon Barrow, number 2, and Derek Harmon, number 3. To redo that, I'd have Harmon, number 1, for various reasons. And, of course, Michigan State lost Barrow and Harmon. Had Tanner Miller, number 4. He's second team All Pac-12. And he was pretty good as a center this year. Good, solid player. Was he a plus player? I mean, he did his best. All respect to him. Number 4 player on the team. I had Nathan Carter, number 5. I had Jaden Mangum, number 6. He was honorable mention All Big Ten in 2023. So you're returning a sophomore who was honorable mention All Big Ten. I had number 6. He transferred out. So Michigan State lost number 2, number 3, and number 6 on my list. I had Aiden Childs, number 7. Had Malik Spencer, number 8. Had Quindarius Dunnigan, number 9. Second team All-Conference USA. Didn't end up starting for Michigan State at defensive end. Was serviceable. Certainly competent. Coming back this year as a 7th-year senior. Not kicking him out the door. They'll take. He wants to come back. They'll use him. So Dunnigan maybe wasn't the impact that I expected. I had Jordan Hall, number 10. He didn't end up starting. Jalen Thompson, number 11, had a good true freshman year. Sophomore year, a little bit of a sophomore jinx a little bit with him. He needs to pick it back up. 12, Jordan Turner. He was honorable mention All Big Ten early in his career at Wisconsin. To redo this, I think Jordan Turner might have been the best player on the team last year. And he started as a sophomore at Wisconsin, honorable mention All Big Ten, and then 2023 lost his starting job pretty much. Went in the transfer window, came back pretty motivated, had a real good season. And that was also a really good portal evaluation by Michigan State's staff to go out there and get Turner. Ended up being a good player. I had Chance Rucker, number 13. And had Cal Halliday, 14, Montori Foster, 15. Had Jonathan Kim as a kicker, 16. This is before spring practice. So this is about 12 months ago. Had Maverick Hansen, 17. Dylan Tatum, 18. Jerron Glover, 19. Angelo Groves, 20. Wayne Matthews coming in, 21. Had Gino Vandermark, 22. He left. 23, Ethan Boyd. He left. 24, Brandon Baldwin. 25, Jalen Berger. He left. 26, Chris Bogle. Now, he ended up being better than that. Had a nice little comeback last year. Darius Snow, we didn't know what his injury situation was. I had him at 27. These two I had too low. Daquan Dowse, 28, ended up being a top 10 player on the team. Luke Newman, 29. A little bit surprised by that because I was talking him up on this broadcast last year. I had him 29 and Fincher 30. To do that over again, I had Charles Brantley way down at 34 because he'd been injured and ended up doing much better than that. So any ranking that I have is going to be some conjecture. We don't know. It's all conjecture. We don't know how these players are going to perform, how motivated they're going to be during the offseason, how healthy they're going to remain, and so forth. So it's just entertainment purposes only. You can tell that a lot of those were erroneous. Well, I don't want to say erroneous, but we didn't know what we didn't know about Daquan Dowse at that point. All right, so I don't have a top 10 at this point. Maybe that's something I'll put together before spring after the transfer portal completely closes. and after I have a chance to watch a little bit more film. But I want to turn that over to the viewers. Tell me who you have in your top 3, top 5 current players on the Michigan State roster. We did do a poll for this a couple years ago, and we'll do that poll again in the offseason, in the summer. Meaning we'll turn it over to SpartanMag.com subscribers, ask them their top 10, put that into the top 20, and do a story on it that way. That'll be a good one. Anyway, so I'll turn that over to you guys. Go ahead and post what you think. Question number 2, Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights has a basketball question. He says, do you see the 3-headed center monster for Michigan State being sustainable with the basketball team? Have you noticed any negative things associated with the cross-country travel with the teams? Do you see any patterns? In terms of travel, I don't see anything yet. You know, Michigan went out to the West Coast, beat USC, beat UCLA, played well down the stretch against UCLA, won that game after midnight. Credit to them. Mick Cronin, UCLA's coach, really ripped on his UCLA team, really questioning their heart, how much they want to win, all those things really came after them. Michigan played well, did pretty well, turnovers, but Michigan got that West Coast trip early, and that's the ideal time to go. After Christmas, you've had a couple games back, you go early before you're tired. A tough time, it'll be different when teams go out west, like in mid to late February, in the so-called dog days. That's when you don't want to go, and I think Michigan State goes late January. It's going to be tough. Izzo's not said this. I've not asked him about it, but I suspect that one of the reasons that Michigan State lightened their schedule a little bit in December this year is because they don't know exactly what that's going to be like with the West Coast travel. And when Michigan State put their scheduling together, they didn't know where the Big Ten was going to place their West Coast trip. So no trends yet, but I expect teams that go out there, their winning percentage when they get back, or even in the 10 days after they're back, I think they'll flutter a little bit. USC and UCLA, after they travel back and forth a few times, I think they're going to hit a wall. And why I say this, I'll use Bob Huggins as an example, head coach at West Virginia when he was in the Big 12. West Virginia joined the Big 12, and they were merely traveling from West Virginia to Texas back and forth all the time. Or that similar length, whether they were going to Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State. They were traveling about that much, and he said it wore his team out over the long haul. So I think it's going to have a bigger impact on Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. And those teams that go out west, we'll see what they look like in the 10 days after they return. Having to stay overnight out there, it can be good for camaraderie and so forth. But Michigan won their 2 games out there. That puts them a little bit ahead of everyone else. Secondly, they had a schedule break, in my opinion, that they went out when they did the first week of January. Also, the 3-headed monster for Michigan State basketball. You know, I touched on this in an article we did at SpartanMag.com earlier in the week, the 3-and-out coming out of Izzo's press conference. And I talked a little bit about the center position. And Michigan State's getting better productivity than last year and the year before, that's for sure. And not plus player production, but pretty good production. Simone Zapawa has been better than I expected, and Izzo even said better than he expected. The guy's bulked up. He's a legit 7 foot. And that gives them some rim protection like they haven't had, and he moves well laterally. We saw that in some film at Longwood when he scored well in their conference tournament. He did some things, ball skills and fluidity that looked pretty good. I'm like, how come this guy didn't average this all year? I heard conditioning was not great for him last year. Heard that from someone who knows someone who's on the staff out there. Conditioning's not been a problem for him this year. He's bulked up. He's strong. When he gets the ball down low, he's fluid with the ability to deposit into the rim, finish in plays better than Sissoko did. Nothing against Sissoko. Sissoko is 6'9", kind of robotic. Zapawa's got just he's not as stiff. And when he gets the ball down low, I've written it this way before. Some of you may agree or disagree. He gets it down low, he's got a good chance to score and do it with a decent variety of ways. Whereas when Sissoko would get it down low, the game would kind of stop. And once in a while, he'd hit a nice turnaround jumper, but Zapawa's coming along nicely. Jackson Kohler's starting in the 4, playing some 5. He's getting double-doubles on a regular basis. You know, Kohler's had this in him, and I thought he could have done this last year, but he had the injuries. This year, a little bit, he's lost some of that baby fat, and he's moving well, which they need him to be able to do, to be able to move his feet on defense against some of the mismatched 4s or even skilled 4s like you'll see against Michigan. But some of the mismatched 4s like the The guy for Ohio State, 6'7", a guy Michigan State recruited. Can't think of his name right now, but he's like a mismatch for. He could really drive, and when he got faced up against Kohler, he drove against Kohler. Had some success with it. Kohler didn't really get burned bad, but Michigan State ended up going with Cohen Carr at the power forward position. Had a little more success with that, but Kohler's good. He can score, and he's credit to him. He's stuck with it. Michigan State stuck with him. He's stuck with Michigan State, and he's doing good things as a starter now. Booker is occasionally productive coming off the bench, doing some decent things. Carson Cooper, only 9 minutes against Ohio State. Had a career-high 13 previous game against Western Michigan. So his minutes were down against Ohio State. And I was at practice a couple days ago, and I've never seen Carson Cooper as determined as I saw him that day. He's got a fire lit under him right now. So I don't know what that's going to mean. But Cooper is averaging fewer minutes this year than he did last year, and he's a better player. But he still gives you some strength and some lateral movement on defense, which is useful. All those guys, I think they're going to keep getting better and better. I think Kohler's going to keep getting better. I think Booker's going to keep getting better. I think Zapawa, even though he's late in his career, he's improved a lot just since August, just since October. I think he's going to continue to improve. Are any of those guys like Broom from Auburn? No. Are any of those guys like Zach Edey? No. But I think the combination at the center position is bordering on a plus area for Michigan State. Now, can they play good defense against really good centers? You know, Hunter Dickinson had a really good opening 15 minutes against Michigan State. And Dickinson, like, that's the book on him. He's really good in the first 12 minutes of a game. Later, it wavers a little bit. So you're asking, do I see the five being sustainable with the basketball team? I think it's sustainable, and I think they're going to get better. Now, the productivity might not improve because the schedule is going to get tougher and the opposition is going to get tougher. But in terms of interior players with the ability to play competent basketball, yeah, I think Michigan State's fine there. Is it a plus? Is it a mismatch position? Against some teams, maybe, but it certainly isn't the void that it had been for the previous few years. All right, question 3, Matt in Grand Rapids. He says, do you expect Michigan State to add any more on-field coaches? Talking about football now. Like a linebackers coach or a dedicated special teams coordinator? Also, do you know which coaches will be the 10 that will be allowed to recruit? So Michigan State's going to operate basically with 11 coaches now, it looks like. Demetrius Martin left. Michigan State hired James Adams to be safeties coach coming in from Wake Forest. Also, Michigan State added John Boyer, quarterbacks coach. So you lose one coach, you add 2. The new rules are you can have as many coaches as you want, I think it is. I mean, they're changing rules all the time. I can't keep up with it. But only 10 can recruit. So Adams, as he's moving into East Lansing, Michigan State had Andrew Bindleglass out on the road. He's a defensive analyst for Michigan State. He was in Massachusetts on Tuesday, Jason Killop reported. Jason Killop doing a good job for SpartanMag.com with the portal tracker and coverage throughout. And we've got features and analysis to support that coverage as we move forward through the entire offseason over at SpartanMag.com. Check it out. Jason Killop doing a great job recruiting anchor for Michigan State. Paul Konerdijk, associate editor to SpartanMag.com. Great job. Jake Laskawa, intern extraordinaire, doing a great job. Kenny Jordan, a good story today with recruiting. Kenny Jordan over at SpartanMag.com to do today. Also, go over there, check it out. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. Go check it out. So anyway, which coaches will be on the road? I don't know that for sure, but with Boyer coming in, it's either going to be Boyer or Lindgren on the road. Lindgren was on the road today, and I think you can. I don't know the rule on that either. Do you have to designate who it is? I don't think you have to designate it because there have been times when coaches have come and gone, and you have someone like Andrew Bindleglass who's out there. I think just 10 at a time, and I don't know if you have to like check in like at a scorer's table. I'm going in, notify NCAA. I don't know. So I mean, Boyer and Lindgren could both. I don't know. Can they both keep going out, coming back, going out, being the 10th man, or do you just designate Boyer's our 10th man? That's it. I don't know. So I'm thinking, just guessing. I suspect it might be Boyer going out. But as soon as I say that, I know Lindgren was out this week, and I know Lindgren has all these guys, want to move on in their coaching career. And if that's your goal, you don't want to shut off recruiting responsibilities because that's an important part of your job, no matter what level or if you want to be a head coach someday. So part of me was thinking maybe Lindgren won't be recruiting, but I think he will be. Boyer, I don't know. Maybe they check in, check out. I don't know. Great question. Don't know the answer. Let's see. Question number 4, Sparty got 6 from Troy, Michigan says, thoughts on the backup quarterback as it stands right now. Is Jonathan Smith confident with Alessio Milivojevic or Rylan Jesse being the backup, or will they pluck a journeyman from the portal again? Great question. I've wondered it myself. Alessio Milivojevic came in, threw a pass late in the Rutgers game, interception as a true freshman, still redshirting. So a lot to learn there. Important spring for him. It'll be his second spring, right? And he needs to take some steps to show that he can be a competent second-string quarterback. And that's a question still. I thought Milivojevic's high school film was better than Rylan Jesse's. Jesse's got a chance to continue to come along. Of course, Tommy Schuster's gone. He's graduated. So Schuster had some limitations in terms of arm strength, but he had a lot of experience. And they never had to turn a game over to him. But if they had to, I'm not sure how well it would have went, but he would have had some poise and moxie to handle the situation. Milivojevic, still new. Through the interception late in the Rutgers game, we haven't seen a lot of him. He might have more natural talent than Schuster had, but Schuster had all that experience, which was nice to have as a second-string quarterback. Short answer, I'm sure they would like to have someone a little bit with more experience at second-string quarterback, someone who's a little more proven, but it's hard to find that. I mean, they did well to find Schuster last year. Can they find another, FCS type of guy who just wants a shot at the Big Ten and be a part of a Big Ten school? I don't know who that person would be at this point. I've not heard anything. I've heard a little bit about what slots they want to fill, and according to I've got them at about 84 scholarship slots right now. And there will be some that leave after spring practice, and that'll open up a few more doors. But I've not heard quarterback listed as an area of need, second-string quarterback. If you get one, bonus, I think. You've got the true freshman coming in from California, so that gives you 4. I don't think you carry 5. So my guess is they're going to stand pat with that. All right, let's go over here to the comments area. And we've got, Austin Wolf, a good point. Leo Hannon, the quarterback coming in from California. Austin Wolf says over here in the comments area could rise up to second string. It's hard for a true freshman to do that. Hard. I mean, he comes in a little more polished than Milivojevic. That'll be a good competition between Milivojevic and Hannon. And we'll see if Jesse has much to say about it. Maybe Jesse will prove me wrong, but I'm kind of thinking it's Milivojevic and Hannon. Matthew Latham saying go green, make the best of what's around, says go white. John Elke from Clarkston checking in. Austin Wolf from Rensselaer, Indiana. And D. Bruce checking in from Vestaburg. D. Bruce, he's been in here before. I've been to Vestaburg. Small town north of Greenville. Isabella County, or it's Montcalm County, right? Yes. Clark Merrier from Sylvania, Ohio. Chris Leverett from Chile, Atlanta, Georgia. Make the best of what's around, coming in from Chicago. Desert Sparty says, hey, Jim, how was your Christmas and New Year's? Christmas and New Year's were great. Thank you for asking. I hope yours were great as well. Hope everyone had a great, joyous holiday season. Yeah, I really had a good time with family. Good time covering that hockey team. Like I said, going out to Grand Rapids, going out to Wrigleyville. And all things were good. Good times. Now we got the weather turning. We got some real life winter going on around here. 20 degrees. I was down at the pond the other day. It is freezing. I didn't walk all the way on it, but I'll be getting the auger out pretty soon to drill a hole to see how thick it is. And once it gets a certain thickness, then you can go out and skate. There's no snow. It snowed a little bit today, so that means you might have to go out and shovel it just to keep it open to the air. Otherwise, it could get a little sandpapery on the top. And I kind of liked it yesterday when it was nothing but like a mirror. And I'm like, if it stays like that, the skating's going to be great. Although you can lose a puck all the way across the lake sometimes. But if you have snow on the side, sometimes you lose a puck into the snow and you can't find that thing. It's needle and haystack time then. So excited about some real winter. They got Big Movie calling in.
Call from
Big Move.
To accept, press 1. To send a voice.
All right, we got Big Movie Ron Armstrong checking in. Ron, Happy New Year. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, man, Happy New Year. How's it going?
It's going all right. It's going all right. Basketball team's looking pretty good. Entertaining.
Yeah.
Hockey team's looking pretty good. Portal additions are interesting.
Yeah.
And there's things to talk about.
I'd say the energy and the feeling around the entire athletic department is, significantly different for me than, let's say, 2 months ago at this time.
Do you want to expand on that a little bit more? What gives you that idea?
Yeah, sure. I just feel like I kind of can see what the plan is with football, especially. I can see what their plan is and what they're trying to get done with some of these additions and just how they want to play is starting to kind of make sense to me. In the moment, it's tough to digest all the losing and struggling and all that kind of stuff. But just seeing how they've approached this portal, the portal additions and just kind of their recruiting philosophy, I kind of understand where they're going.
Yeah, I'm still getting a handle on it. I still want to see more film of the running back, Tao Tolliver coming in from Sacramento State. The last guy that transferred out of Sacramento State ended up doing pretty good over there at Arizona State, right? Cetterbro?
For sure.
So, I mean, that guy was a game changer for them. I've got to watch a little bit more of Tao Tolliver. The wide receiver position, Omari Kelly coming in from Middle Tennessee State. I watched a little bit of their game against Memphis. I mean, he makes some big plays out there, and I like the fact that he's a former top 200 guy, a 4-star guy at Auburn.
Right.
Didn't work out at Auburn, ends up at Middle Tennessee State, proved himself again, 53 catches. Now going back up to the Power 4. We saw, when Mel Tucker recruited, he got a lot of those guys that were quote unquote, I don't want to say failed players at bigger programs. If you're a Michigan State fan, you don't want to you don't want to say that Auburn's a bigger program than Michigan State or whatever, but Michigan State was getting some of those guys that didn't quite make it, came in, tried to resurrect the program. Most of those guys never did. But as a college football nation, as observers, a lot of these trends it's the first time, this is uncharted territory. These are new things. And this is an interesting category. A highly ranked guy goes to a big time program, goes down to group of 5, now on the way back up. There's probably some around the country that are in that category, but Omari Kelly, wide receiver, Middle Tennessee State, is definitely in that category. And I think Michigan State got a very interesting one there. Wide receiver, a position of need. They lost some players to graduation and the portal. Omari Kelly's a good one. Krishan McCray coming in from Kent State is a good one. And Evan Boyd from East Lansing High School, Central Michigan, 6'2.5" or so from Central Michigan, had a nice productive redshirt freshman year at Central Michigan. A guy that you've watched for a long time. So those are the 3 wide receivers, and these are the guys that are going to get their names called on television and through the public address announcer. These are guys that are going to have an impact. I want to ask you about Evan Boyd, because I'm sure you've been watching him over the years. What are your thoughts about Evan Boyd coming from Central Michigan University to Michigan State?
I'll tell you what, he's a tremendous athlete. I think that's what's going to surprise a lot of folks. So that kid could jump out of the gym, runs, good functional speed. I think he's a good athlete. I don't know how polished he is as a receiver, but I do know he's a tremendous athlete. I think he'll surprise a lot of people with his athletic ability. But that room overall, I think that room overall has improved. I think the consistency of that room will be better. I think and I do think that Middle Tennessee State kid will help us on, some of the top end plays, because he made some big plays. And we're talking about that. And one thing I've noticed with this portal approach is, and Matt Dorsey kind of touched on it, and I kind of just summed it up. It seems like to me, they're getting guys that have been productive elsewhere, and we're just going to plug them in and ask them to do what they've already shown they could do at the college level. I mean, that takes a lot of guesswork out of it. You don't know if this guy can play. Well, he's already shown he can play. So let's just have him do what he's shown he can do at a high level. Let's have him do that, and then we'll kind of tweak and add some stuff to it. But we're getting some known commodities, not necessarily guys we're going to go out and spend a ton of dough to get. But just when you do that when you do those things, what you do is you end up with a consistency in performance. You know what you're going to get every week in and week out from a good portion of your roster. And we talk about this all the time. I think one of D'Antonio's geniuses, it wasn't his ceiling, it was his floor. That's 2016, aside, 6-7 wins was the floor under D'Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we have to get to. We got to get to that floor where our floor isn't, we're not bowl eligible. Our floor isn't where we're getting, 40 and 50 points hung on us. So that's the first step. And you talked about it. You like teams always, fans always remember the great seasons. They don't remember the build. They don't remember the painful build and, losing onside kicks and things like that. So, we're in that portion of it. And I do kind of see what their plan is and getting guys that are functional, that, are coachable with a couple years left, but have shown that they can play at this level.
Sure. And, Amari Kelly, first team All-Conference USA, 53 catches, originally from Trussville, Alabama. I'm wondering if Quindarius Dunnigan spoke with him a little bit, because Dunnigan came in from Middle Tennessee State, coming back for his 7th year. We're still trying to look at that angle a little bit.
I'm sure they would have had those guys, meet and kind of give them the heads up of what to expect. And getting Dunnigan back is big. That guy was a player for us, so that's good.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Evan Boyd, 21 catches last year, 302 yards. Evan Boyd last year's a redshirt freshman, 3 catches for 38 yards against Illinois. Also, the wide receiver that I find pretty exciting as a redshirt sophomore, Krishan McCray at Kent State. Talking about a guy who's like 5'10", 170 out of Avon, Indiana, second team All-Mid-America Conference as a redshirt sophomore. That's what I'm talking about. 40 catches, 705 yards, 9 touchdowns. Against Ball State, 213 yards, 8 catches. Against Pittsburgh, 4 catches, 49 yards, a long of 29. Smaller guy, but he's got some strength to him. He's got a decent physical build. Reminds me a little bit in terms of his build of McGarrett Kings a little bit, if you remember him, back around the Rose Bowl.
Yep. I can see that. I think he's a little bit thicker than Kings. I was thinking more of like what was the guy's name that went to Notre Dame and played for the Lions for a little bit? Receiver with the Golden Tate.
Yeah.
Kind of a Golden Tate build because he's a little thicker guy. Looks at least he looks like he doesn't look like he looks a little bit bigger than 170. But who knows? I mean, maybe it's just the angle of the film. Well, one thing I did notice is that guy gets open.
Yeah.
He's open. He gets open. And when I say he gets open, that's route running ability. That's knowing how to set your brakes up, change speed mid route. He's open a lot, and that's something we're going to need. We're going to need guys to get open. And good pickup. That receiver room. I mean, that's been upgraded. Good on Hawkins. Especially with the transfers. Now the kid they added from Ohio, the high school kid.
Mm-hmm.
If he was at King or Taz or something like that, I think he'd be, a heck of a football player.
Which one? What position?
The receiver from Ohio that Hawk brought in. This is going to be a freshman this year.
Oh, yeah, I agree. That guy.
Collier.
Yeah, Braylon Collier. Mm-hmm. Sandusky, Ohio.
Yep, heck of a player.
I agree.
But no, like I said, I feel better with some of the portal acquisitions. Folks are looking for stars and big names. I'll tell them right now, I wouldn't do that. Just kind of buckle in and just be prepared. It's gonna be a little bumpy ride for a minute, but I see where we're headed.
Right.
They're like, we have got to build this foundation up, build the floor first, because the old cliches. You lose more games with your worst player than you win with your best player, and a lot of that's true, especially when you start having injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Because most teams, first 22 can play pretty much anywhere. I mean, that's if you're a Power 5 or Power 4, whatever it is now, if you're a starter, you could play most places. The degree of how many snaps you'd get, that's sure we can debate that. But if you're a starter at Michigan State, you could play a lot of places. Mm-hmm. The issue is when you start to get hurt, you start having injuries, or get a little nicked up mid-season, and your depth isn't quite where it needs to be, and that's where you got to start building. And I think the portal, everyone, like we got K9 and we kind of struck gold, so everyone started looking for home runs in the portal. And I think you're going to start seeing teams look for the portal to build immediate depth. Like, we don't have to wait on these freshmen to be ready when we can go get this guy he's been around a college football strength and conditioning program for 2 years now. He knows the demands. He knows the college life, the class schedule, all that stuff that's going to be asked of him. And he's already been productive. You have tape on him playing college football. I think that's the new for most teams. Now there's going to be the Oregons and the some of these places that can just go buy talent. And that's great. But as we saw in baseball, you still got to be able to, you know, identify, you know, what's going to help you win. Just because you went out and spend a ton of money doesn't mean you're going to win.
Right.
So, you know, I do like what we're doing with some of these guys that, you know, good in the room, depth pieces, you know, can get in and help you play, you know, sound football. Did I think we hit some home runs? No, we got a lot of singles.
Mm-hmm. And if the quarterback really comes around and improves, and the running back turns out being
the
pretty.
offensive line. Listen. If we get good off, there's enough good on film from Aiden Childs when he had protection, and he could throw in rhythm. There was enough good on film that leads me to believe that if he can feel confident in our offensive line, the next step for him is going to be enormous.
Yeah. I think the second string could look like this. Caleb Carter, the senior coming in from Western Carolina. Gavin Brocious at guard. Rakeem Johnson at tackle. That's a second string, I think. I mean, any of those guys can have a great offseason and come in and compete for a starting job.
That's not to cut you off, but that's a kid I'm so excited about his offseason. I think he has a chance to be an all Big Ten kind of player.
Mm-hmm. He's going to push
Rakeem
Rakeem Johnson
I'm
will
excited
be.
about that kid.
Rakeem Johnson.
I'm excited. That kid.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Just excited about that kid's future. You know, it was kind of like you and I saw him. It was like we saw Jalen Thompson. You know, just little small samples of like, okay, you know what, that wasn't bad, kid. You know, you're a freshman. You got thrown in the fire. That wasn't bad. You know, there's something to work with there.
In his high school film, you know, Matt Dorsey and I were talking about that after signing day a year ago. And I know he was playing in Idaho. I didn't care. I mean, I was like, this offensive linemen don't move like this. I thought that he could be like a defensive end for Northwestern or something like that. But he's,
you know, I honestly thought that was my thought. Like, man, you know, this kid. And truthfully, my thought was in a different situation, he might have been a D lineman. He might have moved in a D line because he's got strong hands. He moves pretty well. You know, I'm like, in a different situation, this kid might have been moved to D-line.
And then he went out and did a bunch of great things in track and field, and I think basketball, and learned everything, did not play spring practice at Michigan State, came in August, and they had him on the field in September, learning the intricacies at two positions. He's playing guard and tackle as a true freshman without spring practice.
He got some left tackle snaps. Got some left tackle snaps. So, I mean, you know, that's a heck of accomplishment for a young fella and a compliment. Like, hey, you know, we believe in you. So
now 6'3" is not ideal. It's not ideal for offensive tackle, but long term, I was wondering with his obviously the way he's demonstrated the ability to process and the brain power to go with all that athleticism. I thought maybe he's a center. You know, long term, like once you get good tackles and you're good everywhere else, he can be a functional tackle probably, but he could be like a plus center with his ability to snap and pull and make calls.
Snap and pulls. Looks like he's got pretty strong hands. Absolutely.
So that's
yeah. You know what? If you see that kid playing center, that means our offensive line. If he's our starting center, our offensive line, we're on our way.
Someday.
Yeah, we're on our way. Right. That means we got everything else is so good. We put him at center. Like that's what we're trying to get to up front.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to sell Caleb Carter short, the senior from Western Carolina. He had some good moments in some of the games that I've seen. I'm a little more impressed with Luka Vincic coming in from Oregon State. And I liked him a lot. And I thought he was the center until Michigan State went out and got Matt Gulbin from Wake Forest. I've not studied Matt Gulbin yet, but I'm hearing that he's probably going to be the center, which means Vincic is a guard. You've already got Christian Phillips and Brocious over there at guard. Caleb Carter is around. So you got a competition at guard all of a sudden. And I think there's a lot of good, competent players. Good, competent players right there. Still don't have the tackle situation. I think Stanton Ramil has a good future. And you have Rakeem Johnson getting ready to compete with Ashton Lepo, and Lepo's got to be better than he was last year. Otherwise, Rakeem Johnson's going to pass him by, and that's just the way it's going to be. And this is before they add another tackle in the portal. They're busy. Mm-hmm. You know, they went after the Thompson kid from Northwestern, ended up committing to Tennessee, then changing it, committing to LSU. I think if Michigan State were more established, I think Michigan State might have had a better shot at him. And if Michigan State were more established and maybe one player away, then maybe you do pay more. to maybe
Sure.
get a guy like that, but you're not going to pay at this stage of Michigan State's building process.
No.
You're not going out looking for a Darrell Evans, if I can quote it, if I can date
No.
myself,
No,
1984 Detroit
exactly,
Tigers.
exactly. Right.
When you're close, then you go ahead and pay to get that guy.
Yeah, exactly. When you're close, you go ahead and make that move.
Right.
It made sense for Oregon to pay Derek Harmon. It made sense for Miami, to pay Barrow.
Or the Detroit Lions to make that trade to bring in that defensive end after Hutchinson got injured.
Absolutely.
So now's
You
the
got to
time.
do these things. Absolutely. You're one guy away, and you got an opportunity. You go ahead and make that move. When you're trying to when you're trying to build a foundation, that just doesn't help you at all. I mean, that's just all you're doing is eventually what you're doing is costing yourself because now these other kids are going to want you paid. So you're really setting yourself back in doing that, getting the bidding wars and stuff like that right now.
Right. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I do like the direction that we're headed. This off season is just monstrous, man. I'm excited for it because I think you're going to really get a chance to see what kind of program Smith and his staff envisions, wants to put in place. It's tough to come in year one. You don't know what you have as far as your players and stuff like that. It's your second off season with these guys. You got a full camp, full camp. Now you got a second year of winter conditioning, and then running into that spring with now now you know what you didn't know last year. So I'm excited.
All right. Now, what about before we talk about some others that are committed? Connor Moore, offensive tackle from Montana State. Michigan State's involved with him. He just played in the national championship game, the FCS national championship game, just a couple nights ago. Enters the portal. Started as a redshirt sophomore this year at Montana State. Began the season at left guard. Watched him a little bit against New Mexico early in the season at left guard. Then he moved back out to left tackle because he played left tackle as a true freshman and made the all-newcomer team in the Big Sky Conference, I think it is. And then this year, starting for a team that played in the national championship game at left tackle. I watched some of those highlights. Couldn't find the full game anywhere, but watched some of those highlights. Montana State against North Dakota State. Looks functional as an offensive tackle. Michigan State needs an offensive tackle. He's just a redshirt sophomore, so he's going to get better. Originally from Ohio. Some indications that he grew up a Michigan State fan outside of the Toledo area. So Michigan State's captured his attention. Jason Killop reported that he's going to be visiting Cincinnati, I think, and then Michigan State after that. So I think Michigan State's going to be right in there with this guy. And hey, he's entering the portal after a lot of the musical chairs the music has stopped for a lot of people. Now you throw this big guy back into it, and there's some teams like Michigan State that have some needs out there. I'm sure he has an agent because that's the way it's done these days. So he's got a chance to capitalize and go someplace in time for spring practice. Or Michigan State, if they can't get it done, then you wait till the spring. And then last spring, the prices went up during the spring. So this guy's an interesting one. As he stands right now as a redshirt sophomore, I think he's kind of like, remember Jarrett Horst, who they had a few years ago from Arkansas State? I think he might be in that category. People are Michigan State fans over the Underground Bunker message board are hungry for him. They know Michigan State needs a tackle. Hold your horses. Solid, functional. Maybe has a ceiling to aspire to be higher, but a guy that could play a role. Probably start right away at Michigan State. Probably it's probably what they're going after with him, and maybe some potential to rise even higher. But this is not. It's not Tony Mandrich coming in, okay? So everybody, just keep it real. But
right.
Ron, your thoughts about the big man out of Montana State who's showing some Michigan State interest? Do you have some thoughts?
Again, the kid just finished playing in a national championship game at left tackle. So while it's not, playing in Spartan Stadium, it's still a big game. It's still a big moment. You're still playing left tackle, and we need linemen.
And also one thing.
The fact that he's played tackle and sorry, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to keep in mind while watching that is that was game 16, and he was playing 4 straight weeks of playoff football. That's why I wanted to go back earlier in the year and see when he was a little bit more fresh. But go ahead.
But no, you know what? I actually want to see the film when he's kind of beat up.
Okay.
Because that's the life in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Offensive linemen, those guys are hurt all the time. Like, something hurts all the time. You're in the pit. So I don't need to see the fresh, week 1 guy. I want to see week 16. Is he still mauling people in week 16? He's still getting off the ball. Is he still light on is his feet still light? Is he still playing? Is he playing with the right technique, or is he standing up because he's a little sore? I need to see that stuff. So I want to see the guy who keeps it together when he's sore, when he's banged up, when he's got a bad ankle, he's got a bump shoulder. That's what I want to see from an offensive line, especially a left tackle, because that's going to be the reality in the Big Ten.
And I thought he moved pretty well. I thought he's going to need to add some physicality, but moved pretty well.
Just listen, another big body like in that room, like you see the reoccurring theme here. They're just adding more quality football players to the room. The more good football players you have on your roster, the better football players you play against every day, so your team improves. Mm-hmm. So whether this guy ends up being a star or not really isn't the point right now. Is he an upgrade? Will he help us? Can he help us on Saturdays? And and I think those are yes to both of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You improve the team, and the guy can help you win. Whether he's a guard or a tackle, that'll sort itself out. But we got another big body in the room. I'm all for it. Sign me up.
Sure. Offensive
linemen are like D linemen. I don't think you got a full room of those guys. Hey, the better off, you got a better chance you got to win it.
And I liked his quickness when he was getting out to the linebacker level. He showed some quickness getting to that next level. He can hit the gas pedal on those things. The lateral movement on the pass protection was pretty good. And I've seen a lot of young offensive tackles over the years where their lateral movement and pass protection was pretty good as a sophomore and better as a junior and way better as a senior. So I don't want to close the door on that type of development. So more is certain.
And I'll tell you this. Well, one thing I will say about Montana State, and they play some good football. So that FCS football, it's not like he was playing Pop Warner. It's some good football. A lot of those dudes will have an opportunity to play at the next level. So it wasn't like he wasn't playing against good competition. The other thing is they teach the game really well at that level. You know what I mean? So those guys he's been coached. He's been coached, you know what I mean?
And at that level, when you're playing for a national championship, the programs that get that far have taught the guys how to use film, and there's an ethic there to getting prepared week after week. So those rigors, there's some good proving grounds going on there.
Absolutely.
So
that's why when you see those teams, some of those top tier FCS teams, when they play a middle tier or a middle tier FBS team, they're not afraid. Mm-hmm. It's the same football they see every day in practice. They're not afraid of those guys. So he won't be overwhelmed. Now there might be a limit to that carryover. We start seeing some first round DNs, but that would be the case against pretty much anyone who's not a first round tackle. So that's a one off. But the rest of the week, these kids won't be afraid, and he'll get in there and compete. Again, another big body. And the biggest thing I can tell you this: I have not seen these guys reach on anything. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm impressed with. Right, I've not seen a reach. I've not seen one guy why. I've not seen that yet. If I have, I don't recall. But I was asking that a few times, before. I don't see it. I've not seen that yet so far.
All right. Any other of these portal newcomers that have caught your eye? If there's one that you want to talk about by any chance?
I'm trying to think, is there anybody that I think we've hit on everybody that is going to come in and be ready to go day one.
Mm-hmm. All right. So anything else with football that's caught your eye that you've heard about? I know you can't tell us everything you've been hearing, but the playoff.
It's been quiet around the building. Everything's kind of just everybody's just getting back in from break. But I think everybody's excited to get back to work. They know what we need to do. I think the players know, coaches know. So it's just time to get back to work. Now the college football playoffs, it's been great football to me. Mm-hmm. Great games. I'm sure there could be some minor tweaks here and there, but it's the first year of 12, and everybody's complaining about team 13 through 16 not getting in. I didn't care about that. It's more football and more really good games. Now, I will say this. Those opening round games on home campuses, if they want to expand to 16 and we get more of those, sign me up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was great.
That was neat.
Thought that
was
great.
neat. Yeah, that was really neat. So if they want to expand to 16, now the one I think tweak I would make is a conference championship. If you're a conference champ, you get an automatic bid, not an automatic buy.
Mm-hmm. It's my understanding. It's my understanding they had to do it that way because when they established the playoff, the bylaws or whatever, when they got everybody to agree, all the conferences, or as I call them, all the crime families, when they got all the crime families to agree, if they were ever going to expand from 4 teams in the playoff to more teams in the playoff, they needed it to be unanimous. It couldn't just be a majority vote. The bylaws said it had to be unanimous if they were ever going to expand it. So they expanded it to 12, and in order to get unanimous vote, they had that provision. That's what they wanted. That's what the other conferences wanted. That if you won,
they had to guarantee a bye.
The top 4 ranked conference champions, and I think those bylaws are in effect next year as well. So people that want it to be changed next year, you're going to have to give a vote from the ACC and the Big 12, and I guess all the Power Fives, a group of 5s as well. Before that'll be changed. Right. So I think they all know that's the best way to do it. But in terms of getting all the crime families to agree, I don't think that's happening for another year.
So yeah, okay, I can see that. I mean, because and really mainly to me, just for sake of better games. I'm not trying to orchestrate the Big Ten and the SEC. I think for the sake of better games.
Sure. All right, basketball. I know that you were the former Ken Redfield of Jackson High. So what do you think about this basketball? Before I let you go, basketball. What do you think?
5 fouls, coach. Use them wisely. What'd you say?
What do you think about this Michigan State basketball team right now?
You and I talked about them earlier in the season, and I just said I think Izzo likes this team. I think there's some pieces that he likes. The kids seem to enjoy playing together. You don't see any. We have not had that head scratcher game where it's just, who are these kids? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just the consistency of performance, man, is pretty neat. Even when we weren't shooting the ball well early, it still came on, played the same pretty much. You get the same effort. I mean, it's starting to get, where we kind of got to admit that this might be it might be something here. It might be something to this team. 14 games, it's you're getting close enough to a good enough sample size to say, hey, this is just a really good team. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And Jeremy Fears is shooting better than I expected. That's helped a lot. Of course, Jace Richardson's been a pleasant surprise. The center position has been better than people expected. Jaden Akins has been up and down. If Jaden Akins can become more consistent, that'd be great. I'm not sure. He's been a 38% three-point shooter in the past, but that was as a number 3 guy in the scouting report. Now he's more of a number 1 guy, so the windows are not going to be as open. But I think he's improved some of his ability to slash to the rim and finish, because he's never really had that freedom to do that in the past. Shot clock gets down, it was get it back to Hogard or Walker, let them do something, spot up. He went to the rim with a really important kind of a driving high glasser against Ohio State late in the game. It was Michigan State's last field goal, I think, with about 2 minutes to go. And that possession was starting to go a little bit haywire. Ball ended up in his hands, and he just drove, went to the right side of the lane, hit a high glasser, kind of a scoop shot. It's tag, you're it. Do something, Jaden.
Right.
And he's willing to try that. It's not always the cleanest operation, but they'll need that more in the future. But the balanced scoring that Michigan State has, of course, you'd love to have a go-to guy that's really hard to guard. They don't quite have that, but they've got a lot of balance. I mean, Cohen Carr, I think, is the third leading scorer on the team. Jace Richardson is 3rd or 4th. Fiddler, with all those free throws, is still 4th or 5th, although his minutes are diminishing. Zapala, scores 15 the other night.
That's just and honestly, his minutes are diminishing is really because of how rapidly Cohen is improving.
Yes, no question.
It's just, that's just and that's a good thing for Michigan State.
Yes.
That's a good thing. That Cohen is just, and look, you and I talked about Booker, and I said if this kid has the season I think he's going to have, we're going to have a really good team. And you can see it sometimes, like, okay, he's close. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And if Fiddler wants more minutes, he has to become that 40% three-point shooter that he was supposed to be. And if he starts doing that, then we can talk. But the guy is 90% free throw shooter. And last year at Omaha, he was like a 37, 36% three-point shooter early in his career with fewer attempts. He was above 40. That's at a different level, different heights, and different athletes racing out at you. But if a guy can make 90% at the free throw line, that guy can be a 40% three-point shooter. Maybe it's a mental thing right now. I don't know if they've got the patience to I don't know if they can afford to wait it out, especially with Richardson and Cohen Carr coming off the bench doing what they're doing. But in time, I think he could shoot like an Austin Thornton. It took Thornton 4 years. He's a great free throw shooter first. But that free throw stroke is so good, I think it's still in him. But there's some other places that are going haywire. And in the meantime, Cohen Carr doing some great things that the opponent is just like, what are we going to do? What planet's this guy from? What are we supposed to do with this guy? And I loved the against Ohio State. Cohen Carr's hit 3 3-pointers, and people make a big deal about that. But I liked. There was one play when he shot fake, one dribble into the lane, went up and missed a 15-footer. But I'm like, that's your shot. Do that.
That's the play.
Do that 200 times a day.
That gets you drafted in the first round.
Yes.
That right there gets you drafted in the first round.
Because he's putting it on the floor and covering ground so well that if he starts to drive on you, you're giving ground. And if he rises up, there's nobody in the college game that's going to go up and contest that shot at 14 feet. You can't jump with him.
No.
So if I'm his agent, I'm telling him to work on that shot 200 times a day. And next summer, if he plays Moneyball, I'm telling him, I don't want you dunking at all in Moneyball. I want every shot all summer to be 15 feet pull up and some threes.
One dribble pull up, 2 dribble pull up.
Yeah, don't touch the rim all summer. And,
that's it.
Yeah, and I think that that's some exciting stuff with Cohen Carr. Now, Booker had the game-changing moment there with that loose ball finger roll, and then the drive dish dunk, which was nice. His three-point shooting, it's feast or famine. There might be a game when he hits 2 or 3, and then he'll go 0 for 6. For this team to be a real threat in March, you got to have the power forward hitting three-pointers in the Michigan State ISO system. And for most systems, your stretch 4 has to be able to stretch the defense and be a guy that you've got to get out and guard. And, Joey Hauser was that a couple of years ago. They didn't quite have it last year. Booker's coming off the bench as a stretch 4. Kohler has dabbled with it, but I'm not sure he's got the greenest of green lights out there right now. But they don't really have that stretch 4, A.J. Granger, Draymond Green, Adrian Payne, a guy that's stretching and hitting threes on you, unless it's Booker. So there's nights when he goes 0 for 4 like he did against Ohio State, but Michigan State gives him the green light for now, and it's an investment in Booker, and if it comes around, next level.
Here's the difference though with Booker. He'll go 0 for 4, but he'll still compete his tail off. And it's not if he's not shooting well, if he's not scoring, he's not giving us anything. And I think that's a little bit more maturity we're seeing from him. And you see where you're still getting something. It was I thought last year his shot dictated how hard he played, and I don't see that this year. And
he's still he's still working on that. He had that real nice blocked shot against Ohio State, and he celebrated, and the play was still alive. And then he reacted and blocked another one. Do you remember that? It's like, dude, you can wait till the whistle, then he can celebrate a little bit, maybe. But he's a young guy still learning. It was a great blocked shot, but he was celebrating, but the ball was still in play.
Right. But and that's a little bit of immaturity, but the effort is what's coming around. Just that effort of playing hard, even if you're not scoring. And I think it was probably I can't remember who we were playing, and everybody on the team had scored already. And we were blowing them out. And Izzo left him in until he hit a 3. I don't remember if you noticed that.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, and that mattered.
Yes.
I'm not going to leave this guy out here on the goose egg, and everybody else is in the stat sheet. You stay out there till you hit one. You know what I mean?
That's the investment I'm talking about. They're investing shot opportunities for him, and if it ever comes around, this team gets a lot more dangerous. If there's a stretch 4 on this team that can shoot 35% from 3. Can make a big difference. That was a big difference when Michigan State lost to UConn in the Elite 8 in Madison Square Garden that night. UConn had a lot of things. They won the national title, but they also had a stretch 4 that could hit threes and hit just enough of them to stretch the defense. It's a difference maker, and this team needs it.
Absolutely.
Izzo's Final Four teams have always had that, except for 2001. So it'll be interesting to continue to watch that. There was one play also. There was a loose ball, and Booker just kind of went after it with one hand, and he didn't win the loose ball. Izzo says they challenged him on the bench after that. And Izzo says they are learning that Booker responds well to being challenged. Last year when he wasn't playing as much, you treat different players different ways.
For sure.
You're not getting playing time because of X, Y, Z, this is that. But maybe you don't come down on them real hard depending on where they are in their maturity level and so forth. They're learning that he, I don't know if he enjoys being challenged, but he responds well to it. His dad was a Marine, okay? So Booker Izzo was excited to tell us one day during a press briefing after practice, maybe even after that game. He's like, Booker likes to be challenged. Sadi challenged him. I challenged him. So we're going to challenge him some more. That's a good thing too. So the book is still being written on Booker, and he's making progress.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you before we go, there's one guy I got to continue to just get his kid his due, and that's Trey Holloman. That kid he's the ultimate glue guy. I think he's one of those guys you end up winning some raising banners with, that kind of kid on your team. I like the way he plays. You know what I mean? Sure.
And that's a guy who never went into the portal. He's still, I never say never, but you bring in Fears and you're bringing in someone at your position. And as far as I know, never really strongly entertained it. I wouldn't blame him if he did, but that's one reason Izzo kept him around, or made him a captain a couple weeks into the season.
Yeah,
because he just loved the way he's a team guy.
I mean, and if you watch him, does anybody have more fun playing basketball at Michigan State than that kid?
No.
He just loves being out there. He plays the right way. Just like I said, and I know this is just one of those Michigan State deals. When that headband and that number 5 does give me a little bit of Cassius Winston vibes too. But,
sure.
But the kid I just like the way he plays, man. Just all out Spartan. You know what I mean?
Yes, and if all things stay good, and some of these other areas, the screws get tightened, and they do get into March and have some favorable moments and so forth, and they do make a long run, then you start looking at the roster and you're like, well, yeah, look who they got coming off the bench: Carr, Booker,
right.
Holloman.
Yeah.
If Fiddler starts shooting, I mean, you bring out, Cooper coming in to play some defense.
Right.
How did this happen?
It's excellent. Yeah, it's a like I said, things fall the right way in March, and and that guy with the chalkboard still knows a thing or two about March. So I mean, it's starting to feel pretty good around here in the winter for basketball. Man, it's been a while. I've missed it.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been.
We got spoiled. We were spoiled and didn't appreciate it as much as we probably should have. It's good to be good again.
But they're still one of only I think 9 programs in the country that has gone to the second round of the NCAA tournament each of the last 2 years. That's not a bad recession.
It's not. That's what I'm saying. Like the floor. We were talking about football. Our floor.
Yeah.
Like the basketball floor. It's we have. And that's something to brag. Like we've had crappy years that other places would have been like, they got in a turn year and celebrate. We're like, man, this is terrible. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And everybody's got their eye on the Michigan rivalry. That'll be fun again this year. Michigan's pretty good. Michigan State does not play Michigan until February 21st. They play them 2 of the last 5 games, 2 of the last 5, including Senior Day in East Lansing, March 9th on a Sunday, noon, Senior Day against the Wolverines.
Nice.
Okay, prior to that, they're going to they have Washington at home this week on Thursday, at Northwestern on Sunday, then Penn State at home on Wednesday, then Illinois at home January 19th, Sunday at noon. Not to say that the game at Northwestern, that'll be a test. It's always a test. Penn State's better than people expected. But Illinois, Michigan State against Illinois at Breslin Center, January 19th. We will learn more at that juncture. So some interesting red letter days coming up for Michigan State basketball. I appreciate it, Ron. You take care. Thanks for coming on the show. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Ron. There he goes. Ron Armstrong, always great to hear from him. Give us some more comments over in the comments area, and we'd love to address those. Let's take a look at those right now. I don't know if, again, who are your top 10 Michigan State football players right now? It's not easy when he's set out to actually do it. It's not easy. I think you'll notice that. Chris Leverett chiming in from Atlanta. Eric M. from Roswell, Georgia. Chris Leverett, thanks for covering the volleyball stuff today. Yeah, we got it. We put some volleyball video up. Kristen Kelsey, the new coach, she was a setter for the team that went to the Elite Eight back in 2013, 2012. And I mean, she's originally from Illinois, and she is all excited and interviewed for the job at Michigan State 3 years ago, didn't get it. Alan Haller said just wasn't quite there yet. Has gotten more experience as an assistant coach at Minnesota at the highest level. Was an assistant coach at Northwestern. So now's the time. And the timing's perfect. Kathy George disciple. Kathy George was there. Kathy George, the retired Michigan State volleyball coach, is now coaching in the pro ranks for the Grand Rapids team. And Alan Haller wants to support that program. They're looking to build a new arena over there. Are they talking at Munfield? I don't know where it's going to be, but it's a two-pronged process. You need the permission to look into it, the permission to plan, the authorization to plan. And the athletic department put that before the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees approved authorization to plan. So now they're planning for that arena. It's going to be volleyball, wrestling, gymnastics, around 6,000, holding around 6,000. Alan Haller said they'd like to do it for those sports and also for high school sports and also concerts, kind of smaller concerts. Would be an exciting addition to the campus. Wrestling could use it. Volleyball, I mean, if volleyball ever gets some traction, you know, they get better television viewing numbers than college hockey on the Big Ten Network. Better than baseball. Pretty strong. So if volleyball ever gets strong, they will sell that place out if it gets built.
Call from
Jason Killop.
to accept, press 1. To send a voice.
All right, we've got our recruiting anchor, Jason Killop, on hold for a minute. Let me finish that thought about the new arena that Alan Haller was talking about today. So the board has approved, authorized permission to plan. So part of the planning is how are we going to pay for it? What kind of long-term plan? Could be a 10, 20-year plan to pay for the thing. And these days, when you're putting together an arena like that, it's not a small $10, $20 million thing. It's going to be $60, $70 million, something like that. So long-term, pay for it. I asked Alan Haller, would naming rights to a corporate sponsor, could that come into play? He said, yes, it could. He's open to all of that. So they're in the stages now where they've got it authorized to plan. And I'm wondering, if in terms of, he mentioned high school sports. So I'm wondering state championships. They already play high school state championships in soccer and baseball and high school basketball at the Breslin and the McLean Stadium. Yeah, I'm wondering if they're thinking state championships. Would it be too small for wrestling state championships? I wonder. And other sports that they could put in there. But also, so once they get that planning, then it'll go back. If they get all the money together and all those things, then it goes back to the board for authorization to proceed. And then you would see renderings and so forth. But as of right now, no renderings on that. But that's what was talked about earlier today. All right, we got Jason Killop now, Michigan State's recruiting, SpartanMag.com, recruiting anchor, doing a great job covering the portal and recruiting for Michigan State sports. Go over to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. We have the portal updates and article yesterday about Michigan State coaches on the road. It is evaluation time for the 2026s. Jason's been covering it, been covering the portal. Now, Jason, we were on the air earlier with Ron Armstrong talking about some of the guys that have signed with Michigan State. We'll talk to you a little bit about Connor Moore a little bit, that his name has been making waves on the message board earlier today. But first of all, I want to say Happy New Year to you, Jason. Great job with all you do. Thank you for all you do. Are you doing well, my friend? Is everything good? How are you doing? You feeling good?
Everything's good. Yeah, appreciate it. Happy New Year to you as well. Everything's good over here.
All right. In terms of recruiting, I'm just going to let you just whatever's on your mind at this point. In terms of recruiting, might be anything that's happened tonight or anything in the last few days. What's on your mind recruiting right now? What's the first thing that would come out of your mouth if someone asked you what's new with recruiting? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, right now it seems like we're going to be heading into a break a little bit with the transfer portal. You mentioned we'll talk about Connor Moore, and he seems to be the kind of the last remaining guy as of right now that we know of for the fall. I mean, for the winter period of the transfer portal. We know they still are in the market for an offensive tackle and a tight end, a rush end, and possibly maybe a cornerback. Maybe some other positions open up in the spring. So we know they'll still be active for guys in the spring, but right now it would be kind of a little bit of a break in the portal period as classes will start on January 13th. So if a guy doesn't make his way to campus this weekend, it's going to be tough for them to get him enrolled into the next semester of classes. So so I think that's kind of wrapping up a little bit the portal cycle for the winter, and we're moving into getting everybody introduced to a lot of these 2026 recruits and people that Michigan State have been after for a couple months now. And they're also expanding the recruiting boards in 2026 and sending out a bunch of new offers while the coaches are out on the road this week. So it's interesting to see how the recruiting boards will shape up throughout the winter and into the spring, and we'll be able to figure out who are some of these guys that they're really narrowing in on and big time targets for the 2026 class.
All right, so before we get into recruiting a little bit with the high schools, let's talk about Connor Moore, Montana State, 6'5", 310, 2 years of eligibility left, Millbury, Ohio, Lake High School. Played for Montana State. They reached the FCS National Championship game earlier this week. First team All Big Sky, played guard early in the year, tackle later in the year, played tackle last year. Started 12 games at left tackle in 2023, earned freshman All-America honors at the FCS level, and played 3 games at guard this year before moving back to tackle. You've mentioned over at the SpartanMag Underground Bunker message board, and also I think on the tracker and somewhere about Moore, and word is that he may have grown up a Michigan State fan outside of Toledo. You reported that he's planning to visit Cincinnati, I think. Any other news on pending visits for Connor Moore?
Yeah, he's visiting Cincinnati now, and he'll visit Michigan State next, and then he's planning to visit Ohio State. And I'm not exactly sure how that'll work, because it was brought to my attention that Ohio State's fall semester classes have already begun, or winter second semester classes have already begun. So I'm not sure how that would work, if he'd be able to enroll and be able to join them in the winter if he were to pick Ohio State. And Ohio State also has a pair of offensive tackle transfer portal commitments. So that's something to watch with the Buckeyes as well. So he's at Cincinnati now, and he'll head to Michigan State next. Michigan State's trying to make a push for him, and he's a guy that they really would like to add to their transfer portal haul. It'll be interesting to see if they can get him on campus. And we've seen a lot of different transfer portal targets close their recruitments down after their first visit, and we've seen others take all of them. So it'll be interesting to see if he makes it to East Lansing, and once he does, if maybe they can get him to shut things down before he tries to or goes to visit Columbus. So those are the 3 schools mentioned right now as far as visits set. And there's been other schools mentioned as interested, as Michigan's been mentioned, and I'm sure there's been plenty of more behind the scenes reaching out and trying to get his attention. It's also been rumored that he wants to move back closer to home, where he's originally from the Toledo area. Mm-hmm. So those schools all the schools mentioned make sense for him to be able to do that and play at a higher level.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering how many chips into the middle of the table Michigan State's willing to push for him right now. Now, he's a good prospect, like I mentioned earlier. I mean, he's not like one of these shoe-in NFL guys that you look for in the portal that everybody would want. But he's good, solid, competent. I've got to watch him some more. But he would come in and have a real good chance to beat out, to compete with an Ashton Lepo and start right away. That's what they would. That's why that's why he's in the portal. He wants to play at a higher level. Everybody knows that. Has he been open for interviews yet? I know he's on visits right now, but and it's all happening really fast. So I assume he's a guy that's not doing interviews right now. I looked into some people back in his hometown and couldn't quite find anything there. But getting any idea of how serious Michigan is for him at this point?
No, I'm not really sure, and he's been hard to get in touch with. I'm pretty sure he's at Cincinnati right now, and I haven't been able to get a hold of him yet. Hopefully maybe in between visits or something like that, get something with communication there, but I haven't been able to yet.
Yeah, just reading things at face value right now, I think I think the climate is favorable for Michigan State to get some good news here. Cincinnati, it's a Power 4 school, but it's still, it's not quite a Big Ten operation, right? Especially if you live in the state of Ohio, you know where Cincinnati is compared to Michigan State. Toledo, not, what's that, 2 hours from East Lansing. Grew up a Michigan State fan, so during his formative years, that's when D'Antonio had a great program going. Whether or not he's ever been on campus, I don't know, but when Ohio kids ever visit Michigan State the first time, they're always blown away because they grow up hearing about Ohio State and Michigan and Notre Dame or Penn State and Michigan State. But when they get there, they're like, man, this place is pristine. I've reported that 1,000 times over the last 30 years. So I like Michigan State's chances as long as Michigan State's competitive in NIL. I know, like you said, Ohio State likes him, but they've signed some other tackles. That's one thing about the portal. Players want to go to a place where they can win, but they also want to play. They want to develop. And Ohio State's it's a powerful program. Everybody knows that. But the path to the starting lineup and to play against Big Ten competition and to give yourself a chance to prove that you can improve and maybe someday play at the next level. Now, Alabama for a lot of years would tell guys to redshirt, then third string, and then second string as a sophomore, second string as a junior. Then you play 1 year, and then you go pro. And it was established that year that was at those places. You could do it that way, but I don't know if there's as much patience now. Does Ohio State go full? Does Ohio State go full blast? Does Michigan State? Are they competitive in NIL? I suspect all those squares could line up for Michigan State in a favorable way on this one.
Yeah, and one thing I mentioned, this is just me speculating here, but one thing I mentioned earlier is with Ohio State having 2 offensive tackle portal commitments already and having a very talented roster and more playing both tackle and guard this last season, that could be something where they ask him to move inside and play guard, and he would rather come and play tackle at at Cincinnati or at Michigan State. And I'm just speculating there, but that could be something on the table where he could push him away from Ohio State at the end of the day, or maybe not, but that's just me speculating that part of things.
Yeah, I don't know Ohio State's depth chart at the guard position right now. I know they had all kinds of injuries and so forth, and that might be a pitch for Ohio State. Hey, we see you as an NFL guy at guard. We want you to come in and compete and be a guard for us. That would be an interesting route to look at that way as well. So we'll see what happens going forward on that one. Michigan State decommitment in the portal. Mason Minnie from Idaho had 5 catches last year. I think as a redshirt freshman or sophomore. Committed to Michigan State, then decommitted today and flipped to California. A guy with a good frame. Michigan State wants some help at tight end. Thought they had this guy. He's gotten away. Any thoughts on that? Yeah,
I think with Mason Minnie, and he's a guy that they viewed as an important target for them, but it's not one that he's a guy that they could probably replace in the spring, I think, personally. And he's a need. That tight end is a need, and it's a spot where they are looking for a younger guy where they can fill holes in the depth chart from previous recruiting classes where they don't necessarily need a guy to come in and impact the team and play right away, but to be a guy that they can slot in the depth chart as a guy to play down the line and fill a hole that they have in the depth chart for later on. And I know that Minnie was a guy that they liked to fill that role and fit that mold, but he flipped his commitment to California this afternoon. I'm not sure if they'll have time to fully pivot to a new tight end target this cycle.
Right.
I know that they briefly checked in on Dallas Holmes of Lafayette College. I haven't totally looked into him a ton yet. Once they landed Minnie, I thought that he would be off the board, but maybe he's a guy that they circle back on for this portal cycle, or maybe they wait to bank that spot for the spring. I'm not totally positive on that yet.
I'm a little surprised that they prioritized tight end, and I heard that they were prioritizing tight end as one of the positions they wanted to fill. And sure enough, they went out there and offered Minnie, and it turned around on them. But at tight end, you've got Jack Velling for 1 more year, Parachek for 2 more years. Michael Masunas is going to be a redshirt junior next year. So that's what we talk about in terms of young guys in the program. It's it's not real deep. But Wyatt Hook is going to be a redshirt freshman this year. That's a guy whose film I really liked on signing day 2 years ago. We didn't see him on the field this year. I don't know if there was an injury or so forth. Not sure what's going on there. And then they signed Jaden Savory, who I think has all kinds of potential. So Michigan State right now with 5 scholarship tight ends as it stands right now. You bring in a portal guy right now, that's 6, unless one of those guys they anticipate moving on for one reason or another. Just looking at things at face value, 5 tight ends, those guys all have something. None of them are great yet. They've got high expectations for Parachek. Velling did not have as productive of a season as Velling wanted or Michigan State wanted, but he'll come back with a little more knowledge of what he needs to do at the Big Ten level. Masunis, they were liking him until he went down with a season-ending injury. Jaden Savory is a guy with all kinds of ability, but he's going to come in as a freshman, so it's going to take a little bit of time. I just have to say I'm a little surprised that they were looking to add a 6th, unless they think that one of those guys might not be around for the long term. That's just speculation, but a little surprised that they felt they had room for 6 and still may go after one.
I think some of the thought process there a little bit was kind of with Minnie had 3 years of eligibility left, and then a guy like they lost Emmett Bork in the 2025 class later on in the cycle where they planned to have 2, and I think it was just to not fill a spot, but to have a younger guy in the room with multiple years of eligibility left for down the line, after Velling and Parachek and Masunis move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because after next year you lose Velling and then you lose Parachek, Masunis, and then after that you just have Hook and Savory, and that makes sense that there's a little bit of a hole right there. As far as high school recruiting goes, you had an article with some information about Michigan State coaches on the road. Blue Adams was in Georgia this week. Chad Wilt in Virginia. Mahalchik was in the state of Michigan a couple days ago. Also in Texas, Courtney Hawkins and Keith Bonifa, the running backs coach. So Texas and Georgia, those are a couple states that I thought it seemed to me Michigan State maybe could have been more busy in year 1 of the Jonathan Smith application. And I think, I heard Wozniak was kind of mentioning that there were some things that they were excited about doing things differently this year, having been through it for a year. And I think we're seeing that right now during the evaluation period here in January. Michigan State busy in Ohio, busy in Georgia, busy in Texas. And I think those are good moves for Michigan State. Michigan State has not been busy in Georgia the last year or so. That was an area in which Michigan State had success in the Mel Tucker era. Malik Spencer's dad is still a big wheel in Georgia. You can still get something out of that, even though Malik's not going to be playing with those guys. He'll be gone by then. But if you're Michigan State, you want to keep those wheels greased. Everybody's recruiting in Georgia, but I think Georgia is accessible to a lot of programs, but especially Big Ten programs. It's a short flight, hour and a half, something like that. Everybody's recruiting Georgia. There's leftovers players. There's 4-star players. There's Malik Spencers. There's players like that. There's Darquez Denards down there. I thought that was interesting that Michigan State had Blue Adams down there in Georgia for a couple days this week.
Yeah, I agree. A couple of the offers were interesting. One of them, Kennedy Bailey, is a cornerback, and he has a couple strong offers: Michigan, Texas A&M, Cincinnati, Arkansas, and a couple more. He told me that he really liked Blue Adams. He's been talking to Michigan State defensive backs assistant Christian Paola for a couple months now, and he's planning to visit in January, either January 19th or a little bit later in the month. He said he hasn't picked a date yet, but that's interesting to get that kind of traction for a visit from a kid that they just offered this week. So some good traction there in Georgia so far. And another guy that they offered, Kelsey DeRiso of Fayetteville High School. Michigan State was his second offer, joining Central Michigan, which I thought was interesting. I don't know how often a guy from Georgia's first 2 offers are Central Michigan and Michigan State, but his recruitment's just beginning, and it'll be interesting to see how that continues to expand and if Michigan State can use that for being the first Power 4 offer to their advantage down the line.
Yeah, Kelsey DeRiso, like you said, Fayetteville, Georgia. That's how you do it if you're Michigan State. You're the first Power 4 to offer. If he checks the boxes for you from an evaluation standpoint, if a guy's from Georgia and you're playing catch up again, and like Auburn and Michigan and Texas A&M have already offered, good luck. But if you're first, other schools come in later. But if you're first, that can have some staying power. And I've been covering this for 35 years. And if you want to go down there and win some recruiting battles or get it done in Ohio, make your evaluation first, be one of the first offers. Now, your evaluation has to be accurate. That's the hard part. But coming in late has never worked at Michigan State if you're more than a few hours from campus. So they did that with this guy. I've not looked at film of Kelsey DeRizo, but that's how you do it. I don't know. Maybe that'll become maybe Michigan State cools off on him later. I don't know. He comes to camp, has a great senior year. I don't know what's going to happen, but I thought that was good work. On the surface, I thought that was favorable, and I thought that it was similar what Wozniak did with an offer in Lexington High School, Mansfield, Ohio. Kenny Jordan had an article about this at SpartanMag.com today. Joey Caudill, 6'5", tight end, 215 pounds, will be at Michigan State's junior day on January 19th. Michigan State, the first to offer, the first Power 5 to offer, might be the first to offer overall. Purdue and Rutgers have also been involved. But the guys from Lexington High School, Mansfield, Ohio, I mean, be real. The guy probably grew up a Buckeye fan, right? Everybody's Buckeye fans down there. Does Ohio State have room for him? If they do, it'd be real hard to beat them. But in the meantime, like if Penn State comes in, I mean, they're strong at tight end also. But other programs, if you want a chance to hold off some of those, you got to be the first to offer. And Michigan State did that in Ohio. Wozniak, tight ends coach, down there in Ohio. He's an Ohio native, Wozniak is. That's how it's done at Michigan State. If you're first to offer, if you believe that the guy is good enough, you don't wait. And I think we're already seeing Michigan State's coaching staff has learned after doing a recruiting lap with Michigan State one calendar year. I'm already seeing some things that are a little bit different already. I think that's a good sign. Maybe recruiting's different now. I don't know, but from years of doing this, if you're a Michigan State fan, that's what you want to see your coaches doing, making quick evaluations. Now, in the course of time, you might find out that evaluations were willy-nilly and they missed on these guys, and maybe that could happen in the future. I've not looked at these guys' film yet, but they're out this week being busy. Hawkins and Bonifant in Texas. And Jim Mahalchik was in the Detroit area. He's looking closely at in-state offensive linemen. If some of these offensive linemen go elsewhere to Power 4 schools or to Group of 5 schools, offensive linemen, it's my observation right now, are not going to leave the state of Michigan without Mahalchik taking a close look at them, whether they offer or not. That's the other trend I'm seeing. Mahalchik, he was in the state of Michigan visiting some schools last couple of days. What was going on there?
Yeah, tonight actually some of the bigger news is he was visiting Greg Patrick. They went in home with the 2026 offensive lineman Greg Patrick of Portage Northern. Michigan State legacy, his father Joe Patrick played for the Spartans, and he's got all the offers in the book. Michigan State and Michigan, Ohio State and Oklahoma. Some other schools are some of the main ones battling it out for Patrick, and Notre Dame and Michigan are seen as the main competitors for Michigan State, in my opinion. He tells me that he's looking to set up maybe a pair of visits to Michigan State for January. His exact quotes were that the visit went super well and he had a good conversation. It was nice to be able to catch up with the coaches. There's possibly a junior day that coach wants me to come down and sit and watch film with Coach Lindgren. So he's planning on possibly coming up to the junior day, and then he's also planning on coming up for a second visit just to hang out with Coach Lindgren and watch film for just a midweek trip, just him. So right now he's in the middle of his own basketball season at Portage Northern. So for him to be able to make 2 trips up to East Lansing possibly this month would be a big deal for Michigan State in his recruitment.
Great info. And Mahalchik also was at Detroit Catholic Central the day before, checking out tight end Jack Janda. He's going to be hard to get, 6'5", 220, number 10 player in Michigan. Michigan's offered, Michigan State's offered. Who else was Mahalchik looking at? I guess Benjamin Eziuka. I got to learn how to pronounce that. I apologize. He's number 13 player in Michigan. An interesting one from Detroit Catholic Central as well. Any early thoughts on that? And also, I think Eli Bickle, he's been involved with him already this week.
Yeah, I saw Eli Bickle posted that he came to his basketball game, and Bickle scored 20 points in that game, which I thought was interesting. He has other offers from Cincinnati and Northwestern for Bickle. Michigan State seems to like him. They visited him during each evaluation period every time it's been open, and he visited East Lansing a handful of times in the fall. I think Michigan State will be tough to beat for Eli Bickle. And
he's from North Branch, Michigan. Go ahead. 6'6", 270.
And he's kind of developed a closer relationship with Greg Patrick, who I just was talking about, and also Cade Kaufman, the quarterback from East Kentwood in Grand Rapids area. Kaufman, Bickle, and Patrick have each visited East Lansing around the same time together, and they've each mentioned each other as guys that they that would be fun to play with at the next level. And Michigan State's definitely the common denominator there between the three. So that's an interesting thing. And Kaufman also told me that he'll be at the junior day, January 19th. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bickle joins the trio and also visits that weekend as well for the junior day.
All right, and Benjamin Aziuka, Detroit Catholic Central, number 13 player in the state of Michigan. These are 2026 recruits, by the way. They're currently juniors. I've watched a little bit of him. He's like a 6'3" center, square, solid square body type of guy, and he's strong in pass protection as an offensive guard. You know, good feet on his insteps, can bend his knees and play low comfortably. That's an interesting one. I don't think Michigan State's offered yet, but that's an interesting one to keep an eye on. Anything else recruiting-wise before we let you go, Jason, that we haven't touched on? What are you going to be watching here in the coming days?
Oh, yeah. It'll be interesting to see some of the just the new offers that come around in the in-state recruits and the guys that come up to campus for that junior day on January 19th. And obviously we'll all be watching the Connor Moore recruitment as well. I think for the most part, that'll be about it for the winter portal cycle, unless there's some surprises. So obviously we'll be watching for that and have all the coverage there if there's anything that changes or any exciting news on the portal front. But yeah, for now, just turning focus to these 2026 recruits and familiarizing everybody with who are some of these guys that the coaches are visiting now usually end up being high priority targets, the ones that they have relationships with already, and that they're making, some of these guys are making their third or fourth rounds out to their schools to go see them. And those are the guys that will be interesting to follow their recruitments through the spring, because as we see last year, a lot of those guys will come off the board in the spring and into the summer. So
all right, good stuff, Jason.
To see how these recruitments keep shaping up.
Great stuff, Jason. Appreciate all your help. Appreciate you coming on the show. Everybody go to SpartanMag.com. Get access to Jason Killop's reporting on Michigan State football recruiting, high school recruiting, portal recruiting, and also you can comment. You can exchange conversations and questions with Jason and myself and other members of the SpartanMag.com staff on the Underground Bunker message board and Michigan State fans all over the world. That's the daily narrative of Michigan State sports. You can talk to Jason about recruiting over at SpartanMag.com. Go check it out. Become a subscriber. I'd love to have you over there. Jason, thank you for your help, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you.
There he goes, Jason Killop. Appreciate him coming on Spartan Mag Live tonight. Let's go to question number, where are we at? Question 5, Jim in Grand Rapids. This is a tough question coming up here, and I don't have a good answer for it. He says, at the end of the season, there was a lot of chatter that there was strong interest from players in the portal or heading into the portal, interest in Michigan State. Players that voiced interest in Michigan State, and I reported that here. He said, I don't really have an opinion, but are these the guys they were wanting? How did all that optimism turn out? That's a great question, and I'm going to be asking about that. Because they keep quiet who they're looking for because they don't want it to get out there because that just attracts more. So I suspect some of these guys they were pretty excited about on the down low, like Tolliver, the running back. There are other running backs that were interested in as well. Like Omari Kelly out of Middle Tennessee State, I think is in that category, having some awareness there through Dunnigan and so forth. As for the others, Luka Vincic coming in from Oregon State was one of them as well. I don't know if the gentleman from Wake Forest was, that kind of cracked open after Clausen retired. Anyway, did you know that prior to the pandemic, Michiganders were taking back their bottles and cans at a rate at close to 90%? that return rate has fallen to 75%. That's more than $100 million of unclaimed money and tons of materials that needlessly end up in landfills. Shupan Recycling has been a big supporter of Michigan State athletics over the years, and they are reminding us that one of the beauties of our deposit system is that it creates the cleanest recycling material for the beverage industry to make new cans and new bottles. When Michigan's rate of return drops, it hurts the environment and it hurts all of us. So help the environment, help your state, help yourself, take them back. They're your lakes, your roads, and your beaches, and it's your dime, so take them back. It's worth your time, and everyone will benefit. Take them back. A message from Shupan, a great Michigan company dedicated to recycling. Thank you to Shupan. Question number 6. Muddy from Frankenmuth says, please give your opinion on any 2025 recruits or portal additions you have watched on film. I've not watched all of them on film. Good question. I've not completely studied top to bottom all these guys, but I've watched a few of them. Let's see. I like the fact that Tao Tolliver had 35 catches. Honorable mention, All Big Sky at Sacramento State. 950 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns, 6'1", 204. I got to watch some more of him. Let's see. Let me find my notes here. Talked about Omari Kelly earlier, Middle Tennessee State. Like Ron says, gets open. Offensive lineman Caleb Carter, Western Carolina, battled some injuries in 2023. He was hobbled by some lower body injuries when I watched him against North Carolina State. He's built a little bit like Benny McGowan, moves well in pass protection, can get out and pull, and he moves well in the wide zone. I suspect that's something that Mahalchik liked about him. He does have some lateral movement that way as a puller, whether he's wrapping or logging, kicking out. When he does it, he needs to improve his ability to really have some pop when he gets there, some physicality. Started at right tackle against Mercer. I don't necessarily think he's right tackle. I don't think they're thinking right tackle for him first on the surface for right now. Mercer had a pretty good edge rusher, and he stood up a pretty good bull rush on one point when I watched him against Mercer. As a down blocker on inside zone, still needs some more physicality there. He has to improve. I think I'm forecasting things. This is unofficial. I'm expecting Golban from Wake Forest to start at center, and I think Big Dooley Phillips probably at right guard, and I think Luka Vincic at left guard. So Caleb Carter's coming in from Western Carolina. He's coming in to compete to win a job. He'll get a chance to do that. I'm penciling in those other guys as starters to begin with. I could be wrong. At linebacker, the guy from Brigham Young, Ice Moa, 6'2", 235. He played behind a really good linebacker this year, Isaiah Glasker, who was a redshirt sophomore. Glasker was honorable mention All-American by Sports Illustrated. He was Alamo Bowl defensive MVP against Colorado. Honorable mention All Big 12 by the coaches. So Glasker's in place as a redshirt sophomore, not going anywhere. So Moa went into the portal. He played 142 snaps, 11 games. That's about 22 snaps a game. Actually, that's about, 17 snaps a game? Actually, I didn't do the math on that. I'm just faking it. But he had a season-high 22 snaps against Baylor. I watched him in that game. He's got some physicality, talking about Ice Moa. Physicality as a hitter. Change of direction is just okay. Needs to improve his change of direction. He's got a pretty good, considering his change direction just kind of looks just kind of okay to me. I noticed one time his takeoff as a pass rush is good to pretty good. Is pretty good better than good? Whatever's better than good. It's good to pretty good. Good to quite good. Takeoff shows some real potential there. I'd say he's mostly an inside linebacker, but talking about Moa from Brigham Young. And I watched him against, and he was on the field late in the game against Baylor. In that game, they were up by Baylor by like 6, and Baylor's driving at the end of the game, and they had Moa on the field with Glasker. Now, they're both inside linebackers, but Moa had played pretty well, and at crunch time, they had Glasker in there, and they had Moa out at slot linebacker. So he's playing both positions, and at crunch time against Baylor, when Baylor was trying to make a comeback, he was on the field, so they trusted him there. Takeoff was pretty good. Watching him in the slot area, I didn't see, a lot of it was zone. I didn't really see him like cover someone on a deep wheel or anything like that. I'll have to watch some more. But that takeoff, I think his takeoff is as good or as quick as like a Jordan Hall right now. And Jordan Hall, Michigan State was kind of hoping could be a third down linebacker that becomes an edge rusher. They tried it, and they got something out of that, but it's not really a plus area for Jordan Hall. And Jordan Hall is going to be more of an inside linebacker, I would think, this coming year. But I think Moa is similar, physical. Change of direction, Hall might be is probably a little bit better there. I think Moa might have a little better takeoff as a pass rusher. I've not watched him enough to see what he does with his hands or the ankle flexibility, hip flexibility to turn the corner and so forth. I just noticed the takeoff that had some electricity to it. So Moa is going to be, 2 years of eligibility left. Has some physicality. I think he's a playing group guy. Over there on the edge, David Santiago. Let's see here. Hold on. I got a text. All right. So Santiago's the guy coming in from Air Force, 6'4". He has some physicality to him when he takes on like a wham blocker coming at him. He's sturdy. Had 3.5 sacks. But, is he an upgrade from Bogle? Not right away, I don't think, in my opinion. But, last year I watched Jordan Turner come in, and he was better than I thought. Daquan Dowse was better than I thought. So what I say these guys are right now, Michigan State's track record in the portal is pretty good. So I'm not repeating what the coaches think. This is just my thoughts on these guys. And maybe after they sign, maybe the coaches will give comments about them. Or maybe if I get a chance to talk to coaches when I see them at camps and so forth, maybe they'll talk to me about some of these guys. It would help for the fans if we had some of those comments. Otherwise, it's just me doing it. I'm not exactly Gil Brandt, but I put in some time and try to provide some insight on some of these guys. Santiago, 6'3.5", 6'4", good frame. Again, the change of direction, the pursuit speed is just kind of okay. He's got some physicality to him. I don't think he's a stand-up edge difference-making pass rusher right now. The 3.5 sacks, Michigan State could use that. I'm not sure he gets 3.5 sacks against Michigan State's schedule this past year, but if he improves, he's got a chance to develop into something maybe like a Danny Stigro. Danny Stigro is a guy that Joe Rossi had at Minnesota, but Stigro was like 6'5", 255, honorable mention All Big Ten in 2024. He was like a low 3-star guy, number 7 in Minnesota. Maybe they see, it kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Somewhere between that and like an Avery Dunn. Not as different type of player than a Chris Bogle. Bogle this year, I think, had 4 sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss. So statistically, they're similar, different schedules, of course. Santiago is kind of a depth guy, I think. Could be wrong, but that's my thought on that. Grady Kelly, I'm still looking at him, 6'2", 295, defensive tackle, Florida State. 204 snaps, averaged about 20 snaps a game, had 30 snaps against Notre Dame. I watched a little bit of the Notre Dame game today, as a matter of fact. Averaged about 17 snaps a game. I'd say Grady Kelly is a senior, 6'2", 295. Not a ton of size, but he plays hard. He's got some quickness. I saw him take on a double team block once, an anchor, and he was okay. I'm not sure he can take on a double team like 40 times a game or anything, but he can pinch some innings for you. I think he's somewhere between Alex Van Sumeren and Maverick Hansen. Not as big as Maverick Hansen, but I don't expect him to eclipse what they've been. And you have to hope that Van Sumeren takes it up a notch this year. But I think Kelly plays hard, gives effort. Doesn't have great size, but I think he can give you 17 to 20 snaps, pitch some innings for you. He's coming in here to do more than that, but you have Van Sumeren, you have Jalen Satchel coming back, maybe a bigger role for Satchel. Ben Roberts coming back, maybe a bigger role for Roberts. Mike Schonbieler, I saw him play a little bit. I went back and watched it against Prairie View, and just a couple of snaps, but I got a little bit better of a feel for Beeler. And then Derek Simmons coming in as a true freshman is going to compete for something in there. I don't know if Michigan State has any real difference-making dudes in there at defensive tackle. I think Daquan Dowse at times was a dude. Can Ben Roberts become a dude? Maybe. Can Simmons become a dude in the future? Maybe. Van Sumeren, you'd hope so, but I think he's just kind of a somewhere between a guy, not quite a dude yet. Maverick Hansen was a guy, not a dude. You know what I'm saying? Nothing against them. Great respect for them. But Kelly, you can never have enough of these defensive tackle types. So I don't know if he's a difference maker, but it's good to have him in the bullpen. Some of these others, we'll talk about him as we head towards winter football and into the spring. And we'll do that more as we go along. Thanks for the question, but I don't want to go over every single one of them, but we will talk about them as we move forward. Let's go to the next question. Question 7 from Spartans 2025. Jim, who's your favorite Michigan State athlete of all time, either football, basketball, or hockey? As a youngster in elementary school, it was Magic Johnson, right? Irvin Johnson. As for people I've met over the years, Steve Smith. He was at Michigan State when I was at Michigan State. Had a lot of the same friends, same circles, and he was just a wonderful guy in college. Continues to be a wonderful guy. The Steve Smith you see on TV, that's the real Steve Smith. He's awesome. Great player as well. Jim Szymanski was a friend of mine in college too. I need to touch base with him. He's a dandy. In terms of entertaining players and so forth, Smith, of course, fits that. I used to love to watch Sean Respert. Back then, our seats were mid-court, and there's something about the mid-court first row before they sold those for money, no complaints there. But there's something about that vantage point where when you're at courtside and there's someone who's as pretty of a shooter as Respert was, and the way he could just get room, even though defenses were just geared to stop him. And he ran well, but he wasn't the fastest guy in the world, but he managed to get open, and that shot was up quickly, and it was just really a thing of beauty. I really enjoyed watching him play basketball. Football-wise, Lorenzo White was a lot of fun, right? That goes back to my college days, too. He was fun. I'll let you guys throw out who some of your favorite Michigan State players are of all time. There's a lot of players I wish I could have watched. I wish I could have seen Billy Joe Dupree at Michigan State. Clinton Jones. Leroy Bolden is a player I wish I could have watched. Gideon Smith is a player I'd like to go back and watch. There's no film back then. Cameras weren't invented yet, I don't think, or just barely. I read a Detroit News article about Gideon Smith when Michigan State beat Michigan in 2014 or 1914, I think it was, and they described Gideon Smith as being the best player on the field, I think they said. And he was an offensive lineman, two-way lineman. Didn't get the ball. I wonder what would happen if he had gotten the ball. So I'm curious. And then Gideon Smith, after his senior year, like 2 weeks later, signed with the Canton Bulldogs. Back then, pro football was not a big deal back then. They're trying to make it a big deal. But Michigan State was undefeated, arguably the best team in the country. They beat Michigan, they beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin was the Big Ten champion, called the Western Conference at the time. And Canton Bulldogs, they weren't taking just anybody. And Gideon Smith was the first African-American player at Michigan State. So for the Canton Bulldogs to open the door to Gideon Smith, he must have been special. And I think Jim Thorpe was on that team at the time. So I'd like to go back. If I had a time machine, I'd like to see what it was like on Old College Field back in 1914 with Gideon Smith out there splattering people. That would have been fun. Leroy Bolden, running back, pony backfield, 1952-53. Hank Bulla, the great Hank Bulla, played at Michigan State, coached played for was he on the 52 national championship team, coached with the 65-66 team. Everybody knows who Hank Bulla is, right? Hank was teammate of Leroy Bolden. I think what did he tell me once about Bolden? Did he tell me that he was the best running back he'd ever seen at Michigan State? Something along those lines in the 50s. I've not even seen video of him, but there's a still picture. I've mentioned this before. There was a still photo of Leroy Bolden that used to be in the hallways at the Duffy Doherty building. And it was a picture of him cutting, and his foot, I don't know how he had this body lean to him. And this is on grass, not artificial turf. An amazing, just a still photo. I remember showing it to Konadak. I'm like, look at this dude. this is what Henry Bulla was talking about. Sometimes still photos can be a little bit misleading, but when a guy's changing direction like that, it was uncommon. 1950s, best college football team in the country. Henry Bulla was defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions when Barry Sanders was there. And he thought Barry was the greatest thing ever. And he said Leroy Bolden was like one of the closest things he's seen to Barry Sanders. Leroy Bolden, Michigan State, early 50s. Those are some guys I wish I could go back and see. All right, let's go to question number 8. Someone mentioned Skiles. I got to mention Skiles. Skiles was a hoot. Skiles was really interesting, very entertaining. Yeah, I got to go with Skiles. Skiles was crazy. No three-point line back then. Great passer. Very good shooter. Could get that shot off. Just had a feel for the game. I got to put Skiles way, way up there. He was hilarious. Yeah, Skiles way, way up there. Okay. Question 8, Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Hey, Comp, who is your top 3 Big Ten Comparoni Power Index Big Ten basketball teams? He says, I got Michigan State number 1, Illinois number 2, Michigan number 3. He says, looking ahead to Michigan State versus Michigan, who do you think will be guarding Danny Wolf? Would it be Jaden Akins or Cohen Carr? Wolf and Golden are good, he says, but I think with good pressure on them, they are a turnover machine. Okay, good comments. It's not going to be Akins because Danny Wolf is 6'11". That's what makes Michigan hard to guard. They run those 4 or 5 ball screens. Wolf can drive or shoot the 3. Golden is very good going to the rim. Physical finisher, much better than he was 2 years ago when I watched him at courtside for Florida Atlantic against Memphis in the worst played NCAA tournament game I've ever seen in my life. Florida Atlantic won that game, won a couple more, went to the Final Four. I would have bet my life against them making the Final Four after watching them against Memphis that night. I was wrong. I mean, basketball's harder to figure these days than it used to be. So that's what's hard about Michigan. If you're going to switch those ball screens with the big man, the big ball screen, your 5-man had better be able to guard Wolf going to the hoop. Can Kohler do that? They're going to drive on him. That's why with a guy from Ohio State, what was the guy's name? Kohler has dealt with it a few times. Has dealt with people trying to drive on him. And that was a big determinant this year when Kohler was going to play the 4. Number 21, what's his name? Yeah, Devin Royal, Michigan State recruited him, 6'6", 220. That's power forward for Ohio State. Kohler was guarding him, and Royal drove on him a few times. They put Carr on him, and that took that away a little bit. Kohler wasn't terrible at it, but lateral movement for 6'11" Kohler guarding someone like Royal going to the hoop could be difficult. Now, Wolf is not as fast as Royal, but he's tricky and can shoot and all these things. He's a very difficult guy to cover. So Kohler's going to be guarding him initially. And you're going to have, Zapawa on Golden. So, Kohler's been competent as a defender this year against mismatch 4s, which is good news. He's not Antonio Smith. He's not going to lock down a power forward. And Wolf is more than just a power forward. He's a 6'11". He's a stretch center is what he is. And those guys play together. So Cohen Carr against him, Cohen Carr would be giving up about 5 inches. And Carr is getting better on defense. For all his horsepower, he was not a really good defender just recently in, the first part of the season. But he's been playing better defense, just like in the last 2 weeks. He's getting a handle on it. So he would get a look at it. And don't count out Booker. Because Booker can move laterally, and he's got that length. Booker sometimes loses in the bumper cars. But by the time these games are played in February, Booker might be ready to come in and play some minutes on Wolf. Carson Cooper's been the guy that would have guarded him in the past. And they got to keep Cooper coming along. And some of you, Cooper's gotten better with that little hook. He scored 13 against Western Michigan, only 9 minutes against Ohio State. But Cooper's a guy you got to keep in the game and keep him in the playing group. And some fans are like, why is he in the game? Don't give the ball to him. Dude, you need all your arms in the bullpen. You need your lefties, you need your closers, you need your lefties, you need your knuckleball, you need everybody in the bullpen. And Cooper is an important guy in the bullpen for a guy like Wolf. Because if Kohler gets in foul trouble or Kohler's just not getting it done and Booker's not getting it done, Cooper might be a guy by then you put on early on him. Because Cooper can play some defense. He's got some physicality. He can get into the playing group, get into your playbook. Get into the scouting report, get into the playbook, move his feet defensively. He's got some strength to him, uses fouls. Cooper might not give you a lot on offense, although he can, if the game comes to him, he can finish better than he used to. But if you're getting offense from other people and he's just a guy that can slow down Wolf a little bit, that's a plus. That's something you'll take if you can reduce the effectiveness of one of their better players and one of their more problematic matchup guys, and you happen to have a matchup who's only averaging 14 minutes a game that might play 17 minutes in this game or 20. That's a good card to have in your hand. So they'll be looking at all those, and any of whom I think might be able to play pretty well. Wolf is a guy that if he's hitting threes, it's really hard to stop him because he's got all that height and a quick release and all that range. If he's on, it's a problem, and sometimes you tip your hat and you're not beating them that night. But to your point, pressure defense, turn it over, that is a problem for them. That's something Michigan has to improve upon going into the future. Question 9, Ben from Spring Arbor. Are you more or less confident in Coach Jonathan Smith and his staff than you were headed into the season, and why? Great question. It's a mixed bag, right? I'm confident in their portal evaluation. That got them to the overall thing wasn't good enough to be much better than 5-7, but that was good. What they had to work with on the offensive line, just not enough, especially with a couple of injuries there. I'd say, it's just year one. So, they got work to do. They got more to prove. But judging a team after year one, I'm not big on that. And they did take over a program that had some talent, but also had a lot of problems, including no quarterbacks on the roster. Childs has to be better. Offensive line has to be better. Schedule was not that easy at all. But could you have beaten Boston College? Yes, that would have made a difference. Upset Iowa, that was a good one. Beat Boston College, get to 6-6. That's about what I was kind of expecting. The blowouts, a little disconcerting against Rutgers late in the year. That was disconcerting. So about the same, I would say. I was not expecting him to be a magician right away or a miracle worker. And there were some miracles that were worked at Arizona State and Indiana, but let's see how those things go long term. We'll see. All right, question 10. Spartan Kids from Parts Unknown said, who's the best portal player to ever decommit and choose California? I think it's a rhetorical question. It's a good point. I'm not really sure. That's it from the mailbag. Let's check out the other comments. I'm interested to see what people said about some of these other players and so forth. Desert Sparty says Big Ten has overtaken the SEC as the top college football conference. I don't disagree with that. It hurt a lot of people that Michigan went 15-0 last year, but beating Alabama was an interesting statement, and what Ohio State's done so far is equally interesting. If you get an Ohio State-Penn State national championship game, the people in the southeastern part of the United States are questioning whether or not there's a football god. And a lot of people are saying, now that paying players is legal, back in the past, the SEC kind of had the market cornered on that undertaking. Wink, wink, nod, nod. We all know it was true, right? But now that everybody can pay, changes things a little bit. Now the best players coming out of high schools are still, there's more down there than there are in other places, but I think that the portal and NIL and illegal and legal payment of players has the dominance that the SEC had the previous decade. It's going to be really hard for them to match that again. It's still going to be cyclical. There'll be times when they come back up and are strong. Right now, the Big Ten is strongest at the top. But we'll see what happens with Ohio State against Texas. That could change, or some perceptions could change. John Elke says Tom's done a good job. Izzo's done a good job rotating players in and out. I would agree. Chris Leverett says Montori Foster might be a tick higher. Marsh has to be number 1 now. I don't know, a tick higher than what? Let's see here. Desert Sparty says Marsh, Ramil. Okay, you're talking about your top 5. I got you. Talking about the ranking the players. John Elke says Marsh has to be number 1 now. I would agree with that. Desert Sparty says Marsh, Stanton, Ramil, Aiden Childs, Martinez, and Eckley. Okay. Got the punter in there. Jason Hitchcock says, you don't need Edey or Broom when you have plus players 8, 9 deep. Still be nice to have Broom. Chris Leverett says, still not sure of the 10, 11-man rotation Izzo has right now will be sustainable for the long term. Yeah, you at some point you're going to shorten your bench in March to like 9 guys. And they got 13 good ones. McCulloch is good. He's redshirting. Kurtang is pretty good. You guys. Jason Hitchcock asks, Jackson Hitchcock, is Rossi not the dedicated linebacker coach, basically? Yes, he is linebackers coach. Chris Leverett says, Hawk was in Texas handing out a bunch of offers. John Elke says, I think using 10-plus players is a big advantage for basketball. It can be, especially with Michigan State continues to get their run game going. It can help, and that's one of the reasons they're good right now. Austin Wolf says Leo Hannon could end up second-string quarterback. Could, but that'd be good in some ways. That could happen. All right. Doors Fan 91 says, Happy New Year, Comp. Today is Robbie Krieger's birthday. Doors guitarist who wrote Light My Fire. I always wanted to hear Frank Sinatra sing Light My Fire. Some of you might have thrown up hearing that, but I think he could have pulled it off. I think that Morrison was kind of channeling Sinatra a little bit in that song. MSU Detroit fan says it's 5 degrees, feels like -4 where I'm at. Let's see what the East Lansing weather is right now. 17 degrees. It's going to be 10 degrees at 8 in the morning. That pond's going to be frozen. MSU Detroit fans, aren't both Lynch, Adams, and Carter done? We definitely could use a running back. Yes, they are done. Carter could have come back for another year, but he's going pro. MSU Detroit fan says Elijah Tua Tolliver will most likely be the day 1 starter, and Chase Clarizio could play as a true freshman. I agree with both of those things. Jackson Hitchcock says, I think Ramil could be a top 5 guy this year. That'd be a nice development. Ellison 918 says, Georgia Spartan here. It's going to snow on Friday. What do we do? Help. What do they do? I've never been down there when it snows. I hear that like everything just stops because they don't have salt and don't have plows and so forth. I mean, I've been on roads that have been unsalted and unplowed, and you just kind of dirt track it a little bit. But if more and more cars go over, then it becomes ice. Then it's a problem. You'll be fine. MSU Detroit fan says Pistons won again, 5 in a row. They're officially over 500 now. Wow. Yeah. Everett says make sure you've got a brush for your car, and it should be all gone by Saturday. Yeah, have a brush. You know, and if they don't sell those at gas stations around there, just use a broom. And if you're going to need an ice scraper, if you have to go somewhere, I don't know if they sell those at gas stations around there either. But see if you can find something that can function as an ice scraper. Sometimes like one of those big candles. It's not bad to have a candle in your car. and matches. Just in case you go off an embankment and you end up stranded and tow trucks can't come get you and you end up in your car. It's 2 a.m. and it's 20 degrees and no one's coming to get you. It's not a bad idea to have a candle in your car. Being in a car is it's a little bit of sense of the false sense of security. You don't need it in Georgia all the time, but in Michigan and other states, it's good to have like a hunker down pack. I was looking for mine a couple days ago, and I found I misplaced it. Ellison saying, if that's the case, I'm not going to go outside. So if you're not going to go outside, then you're going to be fine. Either way, I thought you were asking, like, because he's saying, what do I need a brush for? And Chris Leverrett's like, to clean the snow and ice off your car. He says, oh, if that's the case, I'm not going outside. If you're not going outside, you don't need any pointers. You're going to be fine. Austin Wolf says Rakeem Johnson can play center. He's probably going to start somewhere. All right. I don't think anyone else is putting in their top 5 choices. Top 5 players in the program right now. Yes, Frankie Fiddler is done with eligibility after this year. Looks like we got 3 people doing most of the post here, which I appreciate. Desert Sparty's got Mateen Cleaves and Cedric Irvin as his favorites. Sean Malek says Cassius Winston. Chris Leverett has Scott Skiles, Le'Veon Bell. John Elke says, in my time at MSU, I got to watch Magic play basketball, Gibby play football, Kurt Gibson, and enjoyed watching Scott Skiles. Derek Hurst says Cassius Winston. YT Sparty with a good point. He says Michigan State's size has come at a good time. Illinois and Michigan are big. Correct. YD Spartan says, I like Captain Kirk singing Light My Fire. All right. YD Spartan says, can't even remember the last time Detroit had over 1 inch of snow. You didn't have that all last year, right? The year before, I don't know. All right, anyway, that's it. Appreciate everybody playing along. We have lovely parting gifts for everybody that played today and everybody that contributed. And we appreciate all those that gave us a like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Go to SpartanMag.com. Become a Magger. We want you to become a Magger. You'll love it. Appreciate all the support. And we'll see you next time. Spartan Mag Live. In the meantime, get to SpartanMag.com. Check it out. So we'll see you next time. Thank you. Take care. Be good.